Hey everyone, this is Josh Hayward and welcome to day 8 of 31 Days of Pumpkin. We are kicking off week 2 here with the Kentucky Pumpkin Barrel Ale. Actually, this is my second review of this beer because I just finished one. However, I had no idea my phone actually died mid-recording. So I tried to save as much of the beer as I could, and I'm going to try and do this all over again as candidly as possible. But when you're doing 31 of these things, you're bound to have some technical difficulties every now and then. So kicking off week 2, 31 Days of Pumpkin, this is Alltech's Lexington Brewing Company's Kentucky Pumpkin Barrel Ale. I'd never heard of Alltech's Lexington Brewing Company, never heard of this particular brew, didn't know they made a pumpkin ale, but saw this and thought it was rather interesting. We've had quite a variety of different beers thus far, different kinds of pumpkin ales, different kinds of things added to it, different varieties of ale, but have not had a pumpkin barrel ale. And this is an ale brewed with natural pumpkin flavors and spices and aged in oak bourbon barrels. So nothing barrel aged yet. Thought this would be pretty interesting for us to give a try. You get some unique flavors with barrel aging. Oftentimes you will take on some of the flavors and aromas of whatever whiskey or bourbon or scotch or whatever was in those barrels beforehand. You will take on some of those aromas and flavors in your particular aged brew. So I'm definitely looking forward to this. Like I said, don't know anything about the brewery, but it's a very interesting concept for this pumpkin series. So let's see what we have here. All right, we have a very pretty beer here. I would say this is kind of a golden amber color, pale amber, kind of pale gold. What am I saying? I'm even starting to get my colors confused here. That's what happens when you try to do a video twice. Kind of a cross between a golden and an amber. As you go further down in the glass, you have kind of a more golden color. The higher up you go, it takes on more of that amber type appearance. Still pale amber, but very pretty beer. Very crisp, very clean. Not too much haze in this at all. Maybe just a very little bit. Makes me wonder if they actually used pumpkin in the brew on this. As we've said in times past, that haze that you see in a lot of pumpkin ales, more times than not, it comes from the fruit or the pulp of these pumpkins. So I'm not sure if they used any pumpkins in the boil or in the mash, but needless to say, this is a very pretty beer. Got a little bit of a, give a little glass a swirl there, kind of an off-white head starts to appear. However, once it settles out, it's completely white. So that's kind of interesting there. That may be somewhat of a characteristic from some of that barrel aging. But very pretty beer. Let's see what we've got on the nose. As I take one strong whiff of this, I'm getting heavy bourbon. Heavy bourbon. The whiskey notes, just that characteristic aroma. If you've ever smelled a glass of whiskey or bourbon or scotch, that very strong bite, I call it. You get a bite in the taste, but I feel like you get a bit of a bite in the aroma as well. Heavy alcohol, rich flavors. Maybe even taking on some of the characteristic of the oak barrel. Some woody type notes. I'm getting a bit of pumpkin spice in there. Some definite notes of some pumpkin. Not sure, like I said, if they used actual pumpkin in it, but definitely some of those spices. Maybe a little bit of cinnamon. Slight maltiness. I would kind of chalk it up to caramel type malts. Kind of using some of those more roasted malts than standard pale. So it's definitely some caramel type notes there. No hops in this whatsoever. There are hops in the brew, of course, but no hops coming forward on the nose. A lot of that is overshadowed by these spices that are used in here. So I can't wait to try this beer. Like I said, this is the second video, but looking forward to trying it again. So cheers. Very interesting brew. And quite tasty, actually. The first thing I get as soon as I take a sip is that bourbon flavor. I'm definitely getting that. That's coming through. Whatever they age these in, I don't know how, the type of bourbon or the age of it or how long these barrels have been used, but it's definitely coming through in this pumpkin ale, and that's very, very nice. A very, very interesting flavor. I'm getting just a little bit of maltiness in there, not much. I would say it's a lot, kind of like toasted bread, and again that caramel, as I mentioned, from the aromas, but it's very, very subtle. You're kind of hit with that bourbon taste. As that bourbon taste continues to develop in your mouth and on your palate, some of those fall spices come through, which is really, really interesting. A lot of times when you have a barrel-aged beer like this, sometimes that barrel aging will overshadow the actual taste of the brew, and I feel like they kind of married those flavors together well. You get the bourbon flavor, but then you also get that pumpkin spice, a little bit of cinnamon in there. It's almost like eating some pumpkin pie, like you're taking a bite of pumpkin pie and then washing it down with some bourbon. It sounds kind of weird, but the flavors seem to be there. The bourbon lasts throughout the taste. The duration of the taste, you're tasting bourbon the whole time. It's like bourbon, 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 pumpkin spice, bourbon, 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 swallow. Bourbon, bourbon, bourbon. You're still tasting it. Even as I continue to talk, that burn, the characteristic burn from drinking whiskey or bourbon, it kind of sits in the back of your throat. It lingers there. And it's pleasant. It goes well with the pumpkin. It's very, very rich, very hearty. It's a lighter type beer, but it's definitely heavier in alcohol. I believe this is 10% on this one. Definitely not something I could drink a lot of, but it's definitely something I would enjoy sipping on. I feel like I should have my whiskey glass out, a smaller type glass, just kind of sipping on this particular brew. It is very, very flavorful. Lots and lots of characteristics of the bourbon from that barrel aging in there. Like I said, lasts throughout the taste. A little bit of woodiness in there from the barrel as well, but very, very solid brew. We've had a lot of different pumpkin ales, haven't had anything barrel aged yet, and I think it goes well with this particular type of style. Again, not something you could drink a lot of, or not something I would drink a lot of, but it's very, very pleasant. Definitely something you could enjoy on a special occasion. Again, like the Spooky Tooth, something you'd enjoy on Thanksgiving, kind of a nice treat after the meal. But cheers to Alltech's Lexington Brewing Company and this Kentucky Pumpkin Barrel Ale. Thank you guys so much for following along. We will see you all tomorrow for day 9 of 31 Days of Pumpkin. Take care.